Good morning, good day to whatever time zone you're listening at. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. This is April Nouveau with the Everything Considered podcast, and I have a very special guest today, Tim O. Davis. Welcome, Tim.
Hi, April. It's nice to see you.
It's really nice to see you too. I'm very excited to talk to you about your journey and your work and all that you do for the community. So first of all, Tim, could you tell us a little bit about your journey with the Temple of the Universe? Our audience would be very interested to learn about that.
Okay, sweet. Thank you. And it's an honor to be here. Thank you. It's a gracious offer to
My
get to be
pleasure.
on your podcast.
Thank you.
So I'm going to broaden the question a little bit because I had an experience when I was a kid that really shaped me. And I grew up
Okay.
in Vermont. I'm 63. I grew up in Vermont in the 60s. And at some point, I think I was 11, 12 years old. I had a small tumor in my chest, right? And
Mm,
I'm a country boy. Like our high school was tiny, like 200 kids in our like junior high and high school combined for 3 towns. So it wasn't a sophisticated situation. I hadn't had a lot of life experience, but I go into this surgery and I had a near death experience or an out of body experience as a boy.
hmm
And long story short, when they put the mask over my face to give me the sedative or whatever, and I left my body, like consciousness just left my body. And I guess my
mm,
point is I had no idea this was even a thing. I'd never heard of it. I didn't know that
right.
this was even possible. And I went up the corner of the room and I looked down on myself getting operated on. I went down this tunnel and it was amazing. And the point of this is that experience really made me, I don't know, relax a little bit with like the whole idea of dying and living and
Mhm.
just it gave me a sense of all this energy that was out there that we didn't really understand. And
Mhm.
everybody's got a different way of interpreting these kinds of events, but in that stage of my life and that for the background that I had, it was incredibly powerful. And it didn't change me per se, but it just opened my consciousness to a way of seeing the world.
Yes.
So now that I flash forward from being 11 years old to being 30, and my wife and I had just gotten married, and we were living in Gainesville, Florida, and somebody suggested that we check out this place called the Temple of the Universe. Now, this is back in 92, I think,
hmm
91, 92. And it was not what it is now. Like a lot of people are familiar with the Untethered Soul and Michael A. Singer, and he's been on
hmm
Oprah. But back then, it was just a little cabin, basically, in
Yeah.
the woods, where a few people, gathered every day. But when I walked in, I can remember really distinctly walking into the temple space, and Mickey was on the steps. And anybody who's been to the temple, there's like a little porch outside. And I
Hmm.
remember looking at him and feeling like, oh my God, it's kind of scared me because it felt like this guy could look right through me, right? And just see
Cool.
everything.
Yeah.
And then I had this sense of relaxing because I felt like he wasn't judging me. So it was going to be cool.
hmm
And so I went in and I just loved the teachings. So the point of all this is I had no idea there was anything like yoga or
Right.
Hindu saints or Buddhism or any of that stuff. I'd had a Christian experience that went fair, but I found it not. It
Yeah.
didn't satisfy everything I needed.
Right.
We'll talk about that some more. But I started listening to these teachings, and it's not just Mickey's an amazing teacher, but it's a heritage. It's a history of Yogananda and Muktananda and Saint John of the Cross and like all these great saints and sages from just thousands of years.
Mm.
That's what I found in Mickey's teachings. So he's brilliant in how he delivers them, but there's a history and there's a tradition and there's a depth of what he teaches that has been around for thousands of years.
hmm
And that's what brought me to the temple. My wife and I came, and I think from that previous experience of when I was a kid, it just everything aligned, and
hmm
I felt like I was at home. I can just remember that feeling of, wow, there's a real spiritual sense here of people just seeking God in a really beautiful way,
hmm
sincerely, with deep depth and sincerity, ready to change themselves instead of asking other people to change around them to be happy. So I
Yes.
was incredibly blessed to get to kind of step into that. And my wife and I've lived here now for more than 30 years. So it's been quite a
Wow.
cool thing.
Yeah, I think a lot of people aren't aware. Like I know of the book. I've read the book and I loved the book, but I didn't know a whole lot about his that he continues to teach or was teaching. I think that's something a lot of people will be very interested in. And that it, when you were talking about your NDE, I had one too. And the difference that I felt, it's one thing believing something, it's another thing knowing it. So
Mm.
when you really you actually have that experience, I think that's what we're all looking for is, an experience, like you said, the change is on the inside, not outside behavior modification, as opposed to, real deep a shift on the inside of a person. So
Mm.
I love that you shared about that, because I think that really encourages people, because I think people are afraid, not of they're afraid of the unknown. I mean, that's they don't know, and it's frightening to them. But to know, to have that experience, and to really know what that you were safe in that experience is a beautiful message to share with our audience today. So
You
thank you.
know, it, oh, absolutely. It's, it's such a powerful difference to live without fear. Okay.
Yes.
And like I have tons of shit and fear like cooking up inside all the time. I work on it. But
Right.
that core fear of like what happens at the end of life and
Mm-hmm.
not making that, like surrendering into that, right? It's inevitable. So
Yeah.
why be thrown off by it? Why let that negatively affect one's energy? Why would you do that, right?
Right.
And I think that's perhaps the biggest and most profound impact that it had on me, was that I've got some years to live. It's going to end at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And when that happens, it'll be fine. Like
Yeah.
it's not going to be a punishment, and it's not going to be some horrible thing. It's just what everybody goes through. Literally
Yeah.
100% of everybody who's ever been alive. So
Yes.
let's go. Let's just do everything up to then. Use that time between birth and death with as much enthusiasm and spirit as possible, and make the most out of
Well,
this.
that's really living, isn't it? I mean, fear, I think prevents us from really fully getting every ounce of beauty out of this lifetime. And so that's really when we can kind of recognize it's safe. We're safe. We're
Hmm.
safe. That is the death, or I don't even like to use that word, because to me it's just kind of another, it's
Yeah,
just
it's
another kind of
graduation.
reality, and it's safe, right? And I just love that.
It feels like
Um,
graduation to me.
yeah, exactly. It's just like, all right, I got through this one. Off to the
Next,
next
let's do it
one.
again.
Yeah. So, community. You met. I was kind of going through your website, and you mentioned community, and I want to hear about, in your opinion, how important is community to spiritual development?
It's huge. And I'm,
Yeah.
and again, my opinion, or you can look at the Buddhist teachings. Like that's one of the three arms of the power of Buddhism, is that you've got this community, a sangha, right?
Yes.
And so that's what I ran into at the temple that I wasn't expecting, right?
Mm,
There's kind of there's a lot of ways to look at spirituality, religion, that have been expressed throughout the years, and some of it is like hardcore discipline, right?
hmm.
Thou shalt not, blah blah blah, all that
Right.
stuff. But the beauty of having a team of people that you actively engage in spiritual discovery, it creates a pattern, right? Like, as we all are aware, we've been conditioned throughout our lives by our family and by
Mm,
society. This just puts a layer of conditioning that's really healthy into your system. So community, the right community, can really create a platform or a
mhm.
foundation for growth. And that's so rare these days. And
Yeah.
so at the Temple of Universe, we do every morning. There's a 6:40 a.m. Session where we meditate, and we do something called the Sri Atma Gita. It's
Hmm.
a Hindu song about Arjuna and Krishna, and it's a beautiful metaphor for living your day, right? And then
Right.
every evening we do some kind of a program. So those bookends, right? It's a lot of what we try to do when we set up a meditation routine or set up any kind of spiritual discipline or
Hmm.
routine. It's to create a moment at the beginning of the day and the end of the day where we really drill into what's important. Who do I really want to be as I
Hmm.
grow and evolve in life,
Right.
and not get stuck in social media and the Kardashians and the
Yeah.
blah blah blah, and like just like just scrape all that aside. There's room for that later, but
Hmm.
at the beginning it should be, okay, what am I doing here? And it goes back to, I'm trying to get better. I'm trying to grow. I'm trying to,
Right.
through spiritual growth, increase my opportunity to be happy, be
Hmm.
satisfied with myself, and thus be prepared to have energy for service to help other people. So
Right.
community is a great tool for doing that. And there's so little of that around. So
Mm.
part of what we'll talk about later is I'm trying to create some opportunity for that in some different ways. And we're going to find community one way or another, but getting the highest, best version of that with people who have shared values that are really healthy and productive. It's life. I mean, it's life changing.
Yeah, it's hard to live on an island, an
Yeah.
island. And there's so much in our culture and our society that really feeds that aloneness. You don't have to go outside of your front door to be entertained. You can sit on a couch by yourself, and social media, I think, is a big culprit in that, because people lose connection with one another. And I think that connection, like you said, is imperative for growth. Also support, right? Like having someone, help you to maintain those disciplines, because it's hard to do it all by yourself.
It really is. And we're so starved, like you said, for some sense of validation, to be
Hmm.
heard.
Yeah.
And social media is just like such a cheap shortcut. It's like
Yeah.
there's all
Yeah.
kinds of metaphorical ways you could describe it. Like, it's like the difference between having real companionship and, some experience that's cheap or easy or whatever. But
Yeah.
it's no wonder that people flock to social media, because we need that. But
Yeah.
yet it's addictive, and it's not really set up for our benefit. It's a marketing tool. And if we take it as, with the understanding it's a marketing tool, then we can work in a proper relationship with it and not
Right.
let it replace what's really helpful and really valid and what really supports us.
Yeah. Real connection. Real connection. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's important, like you said, to really understand the nature of it and how it works, and that it is a marketing tool, and we are kind of the, it's it we're kind of the consumers of it without really even understanding that a lot of times. So real connection is very important. Putting that phone down,
Yeah.
looking in another person's eyes and speaking to them on a human level, I think is just so crucial. And I do feel like we're starting to understand that and move back in that direction. And it's just beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really, I love the idea of churches, even if, like, we
Hmm.
don't always agree with everything, just the give and take of going to a place on a regular basis and seeing other people who are at least trying to find
Yeah.
something. There's real
Yeah.
value in that. And when you think about the concept, go again back to Buddhism, but the concept of a monastery is that you've got all these people kind of herded into a
Hmm.
confined space in the same life patterns. And you run in, like, it sounds glorious to live on an ashram. The temple is an ashram, but
Right.
it's also very growthful, because it does require you to have human interactions, and it does
Hmm.
require you to see your own energies in relative to other people's energies, and to work with your own energies as to try to grow and get better. So that's, no matter where you are, the people who piss you off are the ones who are your best advocates,
I
right?
agree. I
It's
agree with that. I think they serve as such amazing teachers and mirrors to us. And yeah, I don't think that can be understated. I've you know, I the idea of being in a sangha, like, I think the misconception is you're going to be off, by yourself meditating in the woods or something. But it's the everyday, cooking next to each other, checking in with each other,
yeah,
cleaning, all those little things that really build spirit or fuel spiritual growth, right?
yeah. There's a metaphor about a sangha being like putting a bunch of pebbles in a bag for a long period of time, and you put them in, and then 30 years later you take them out, and they've been like banging around against each other and running into each other, and they're all smooth and beautiful. And
Yeah,
that's kind of what it feels like.
that's really
And
wonderful. And challenging, but wonderful, and challenging in a wonderful way.
well, it is. And I think that's another aspect that of that. talked a little bit about conditioning before.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're in a group and you watch other people go through their growth, you soon realize that there are moments of depression and darkness and fear and anxiety in everybody's life. It's without having those moments, that's where the blockages get cleared. It takes
Right.
pain to drive out the unhealthy conditioning that we've gotten. What's been suppressed with pain comes up with pain.
Mm-hmm.
And so in a sangha, you get to experience what it's like to watch other people go through that.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of teachings about, whether it's Christ or the Buddha or
Mm-hmm.
even saints, that just don't let go of the robe, right? Like whatever path you've picked, stay with it through the
Mm-hmm.
hard parts, because it's not supposed to be easy.
Right.
And it's a beautiful thing to be in a situation with community where you get to see other people go through that, because half the problem is just getting to a point of pain and it doesn't feel like it's appropriate. And there are
Yeah.
times when it is inappropriate and it's unhealthy, but many of the time our inner work is defined by
Mm-hmm.
that born again feeling that the Christians talk about, right? Dying to be
Right.
reborn. It feels like that. The ego
Dying
goes
to
through a
yourself.
destruction. Exactly. That's exactly.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So suffering has a role, until it doesn't, I guess. But
Yeah.
yeah.
I kind of like what the Buddhists say about that. They say pain is okay, but suffering is when you're letting it kind of hang around. But
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
mind panic.
Attachment to those old ideas of thinking and believing and about ourselves in the world, as opposed to really just kind of letting those concepts go and learning about yourself. You know, I
Yeah.
love that Rumi quote about, when I was young, I wanted to change the world. Or when I was clever, I wanted to change the world. Now I'm wise and I'm changing
Changing
myself.
myself.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a
Yeah.
huge Rumi fan and all the mystic poets.
Yes. Very beautiful. So, what does it mean to be in alignment with oneself? Like, what does that mean about, I've seen the word alignment a lot, and I'm curious about what that
Uh,
means from
You
your
know,
perspective.
in all the spiritual teachings that I've ever found, talk about how like the spiritual path isn't defined by adding or acquiring skills or talents or abilities, but it's about peeling away the blockages
Hmm.
that prevent you from experiencing that.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So pure consciousness, pure awareness is in perfect alignment,
Hmm.
because whatever by whatever name you use for God, or however, physics equation you put around that entity that's made all this,
Yeah.
our consciousness, our awareness is where we meet that space. It's where prayers happen. It's where, when we meditate, we're
Hmm.
going to that place of non-judgmental awareness. There's no sense of good or bad, or it's even deeper than language. Like, the deepest part of you doesn't need English to understand things, or
Right.
Spanish or French. So alignment is about building the habits to help you feel that space.
Mm.
And it's a practice, right? Which is why we have practices. That takes a daily effort and work. It's like learning a musical instrument or learning a sport.
Hmm.
And that work is how you find alignment.
Okay.
Because as you meditate and you start to see the ego will become really apparent at some point. And it's gradual and it takes a long time. But as you go past the ego and past the unhealthy conditioning and past, it's almost like you're just going deeper and deeper and deeper into your being to find this place. Then that's where alignment happens. So
Hmm.
finding alignment is really about getting to know yourself, just like you said earlier, like that really depth of knowing oneself, of being
Hmm.
patient with oneself.
Hmm.
It's a challenge to learn how to appreciate yourself and love yourself, but it's worth the work. It's really hard. We put other people in control of our lives because we seek approval from other people, and we've been trained
Mm.
to do that. We've been trained to not express ourselves and just like change our behavior so dominant people or whomever, work, whatever, has
Hmm.
control. So alignment is about finding your own truth.
Ah,
And it doesn't even mean that you have to even change how you treat people or act in a workplace or act with your relationships.
Mm-hmm.
But that place will change your behavior subtly and slowly. You
Mm-hmm.
can't just sort of, it's difficult to make those changes with your mind consciously. Alignment is finding that quiet space inside so that
Mm-hmm.
you have a reference point to hear your own truth in a really deep way. And some religions would call that finding God, and some religions would call that finding the void, finding,
Yeah.
that place where we are all one, right?
Right.
But there's a lot of names for it, but it's an experience, just like you said earlier. That's an experience. It's not knowledge. It's a
Mm-hmm.
thing, and the only way to get that experience is to do the practices. And the
Mm-hmm.
practices of working with yourself, saying mindful, they bring you into that alignment. So it's not like there's a lever or a knob that you twist or control to get to alignment. It's about shedding all the fallacy and the unhealthy conditioning and the crap, and getting quiet inside and just like
Yeah.
being ready to work with that. But there's a lot of shit to work through. It's not a
Yeah.
clean trip in there. It's like you're digging through your stuff, and doing that with gratitude, enthusiasm is the challenge, right?
Yeah, it certainly can be. And I think, the mind, as you said, is the biggest hurdle, because a lot of people think about having a meditation practice and they get really caught up in, oh, I'm doing it wrong. Like they're,
I know.
this isn't right. I'm not doing it right. And then they end up just kind of throwing it out the window because, they didn't feel like they were doing it right, you know.
Yeah. Well, so across all the different faith groups and religions, and back to the Stoics, right?
Mm-hmm.
Thousands of teachers have taught how to meditate. There's literally thousands of ways to meditate. And,
Right.
on the planet, there's almost 9 billion people right now, right?
Yeah.
So, run that out for thousands of years. And we've got just how many people have said they know how to meditate.
Right.
I think it's like, I do a meditation, open meditation, every guided meditation every Tuesday at 8 a.m. Eastern, and we'll talk about
Okay.
that too. But the
Great.
thing I try to do is there's really basic breathing, and just get the breathing down and then just do it. There's no such thing as a bad meditation as long as you're always trying to focus the thought mind and like all the thinking that's going on, and just bring it back to your breath or bring it back to your mantra. But just learning how to direct your mind is the beginning of mindfulness. And mindfulness is a game changer. Like, and it's kind of
Mm.
an overuse. It's become kind of a cliche. Like, it's a
Yeah.
word that gets, it's a marketing word, but in
Mm-hmm.
reality, it's that space where you're in that conscious place we talked about earlier, and you're seeing your human go through human shit,
Mm-hmm.
and you're loving it, and you're giving it space. But then maybe you quiet it down a little bit, and it tends to limit mistakes and limit bad behavior, and
Right.
open the door. It sort of raises the floor, so to speak, of behavior, and also push the ceiling up. But it's that consciousness. So when you talk about meditation, it's just that moment where you go from, oh shit, I'm thinking about paying taxes, and you bring it back to the breath.
Yeah.
That's where meditation is fail safe. That's just
Right.
do that. Just do that. That's like the one thing. And everybody's got a technique and a way of doing it, and a ritual and a routine. It's all beautiful. Just pick one and do it.
That's awesome. So it's about observing, not judging, because I think that's the conditioning you'd spoken about before, how we're kind of conditioned and we kind of give away our power, and we kind of, not so much our power, but like how we become influenced heavily by our culture,
Yeah.
by all these different things that want to somehow convince us that their way is right. But from how you're describing it, sounds like to me it's just all very organic, and that you just become the observer of the thought, as opposed to judging it or getting involved in the dialogue.
There's a real power in that, April, that when you, I'm going to create a really quick model that when we have things stuck in our subconscious that bother us, or that, points of contention inside us, points of friction, whatever, they register as an emotion first, as a fear or an energy, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's why they're chakras, right? Because each chakra has its sort of range of things that we like to be either distracted by or afraid
Right.
of or trying to do. So when we feel that energy, right, and we feel those emotions, they're going to turn into thoughts.
Mm.
And it can become this experience that I had with my mother back when I was 12, and this experience I had with this girlfriend when I was, 17. It's too slow to let all that go when you're going incident by incident, memory by memory.
Mm-hmm.
Mindfulness in this work we're talking about is kind of catching it at the emotion level, the energy level, and then you breathe and you relax and you can let go of blockages kind of almost in bulk, right? You can do like a bulk release.
Love
So
it.
you don't have to spend your whole life just like breaking down every little moment and every little thing. It's
Mm-hmm.
too slow. Now there's obviously traumas that are they're huge, and
Mm-hmm.
it's human to defend yourself, to try to protect yourself from those things, and they need a lot of work and the help of a therapist to really break those down and unpack them and to release them. I'm don't not undervaluing that at all, but
Mm-hmm.
there are a ton of things in there that can be just let go kind of in bulk. But
Mm-hmm.
it's not easy. It just takes breathing and relaxing, and it hurts when they come up, and there's tears and there's pain. And
Yeah.
but that space of non-judgmental awareness that you just mentioned, you get to see those things go without sort of creating guilt about yourself or
Mm-hmm.
regret or anxiety, or just it takes work, but there's no other work worth doing.
Right. We are very hard on ourselves, aren't we?
Yeah.
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 We
And
really.
working at the root can help with that, but just like you said, being patient with oneself is really important because it's
Mm-hmm.
it's not easy being a human.
It's
It's
not.
it's why there's so much alcoholism and drug abuse and sex addiction, all these things. Internet addiction is because we're just trying to distract ourselves from the uncomfortableness. But
Yeah.
it's that uncomfortableness when we work through it that we find real freedom and peace. And that takes us back to knowing ourselves in that really deep way. That distractions are, they don't give us clarity about who we really are.
Right.
And they're fine. Like I love a good meal. And I look at the
Sure.
internet, I do the whole thing. I love football. I love sports, but I like to do it with awareness, right? When I sit down to
Mhm.
watch a football game, I love the Florida Gators, right? I'm in Gainesville. When I sit down to watch them, I literally will set an intention. Look, I graduated from this school back before I did any of this work, and there's an emotional tie to this, and I try to work with it. I literally watch football, watching my energies get weird and releasing and relaxing. And I don't, football's not bad because it does that, but it's just another chance to let go.
Right.
So it's a space to work in.
So anything can kind of be a spiritual tool when you wrap it in
Everything,
awareness. Yeah.
everything. Like one of the things that I enjoy is that one of the things that I really love about Mickey at first was that attracted me to him was he was a hardworking, successful man, right? And when I met him, he didn't, hadn't risen in the business world as far, that he came to.
Mm-hmm.
So I met him kind of early on, and I could see how important it was for him to work, to provide value to the world through the whatever mechanism it was that pays us,
Right.
paid him. And there's I found that to be incredibly helpful. There's so much growth, like everything is growth. And I see business people like they are so willing to put themselves into the world and change and adapt to the changing conditions. Like you start with a business plan and you evolve through it and you evolve through it, and it can make you change. And there's no room for ego in that. There's no room. You've got to really surrender to the reality of the economy, what people
Mm-hmm.
want. That there's a lot of the Venn diagram overlaps a lot there, and that business is an amazing way to grow if you approach it from the right viewpoint.
Hmm.
Problem is, so many people do it from ego. They want like that number attached to their name of how much their net worth is, and they think that's going to provide them with some sense of validation, and it really doesn't. It is a nothing. There's nothing
No.
sadder than somebody who's worked all their life to be successful and then get there and realize the hollowness of that kind of success.
Well,
But
yeah.
once it's tied into your spiritual growth, then it changes the whole nature of what you're trying to do with a business and
Mm.
your act of service as an employer. And just to kind of go back, one of the things that one of the first things that I got from Mickey when I first started going to the temple, and I was entering my career field at that point, was the value of having a boss that didn't run you through fear, right? That didn't try
Mm.
to manipulate your performance
Wow.
using
Yeah.
fear.
Yeah.
And it made me just to the best I could. And I wasn't, always great at it, but just to try to be a good boss, right? That try to encourage growth and to try to use enthusiasm as a way to expand one's abilities and talents and grow for your own sake, not because of the company, right?
Mm. Mm.
And I got that, from doing this work. And it was really life-changing to feel that, because it helped me to keep a good perspective about what fear really is and how to avoid the burnout of running oneself through fear, motivating oneself through fear
Wow.
or
That is a
greed.
paradigm shift. Huge paradigm shift. And you don't have to live in an ashram to do it.
No.
You don't have to. I mean, you could be an airline employee or a cook somewhere and you could do this work in that context. I just find that amazing. So, I think this leads nicely into this next topic and your work with the incarcerated.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So, um, I was in a state about 2 years ago of kind of having some time, semi-retirement, but not
Mm-hmm.
really. I was kind of between, like, in that sort of last stage of life. What am I going to do with my remaining however long I have? And I had time, and I had seen Michael A. Singer, Mickey used to do prison work, and he referenced it a lot. And I could see that it really had a profound impact on how he grew and
Mm.
how it changed him. Even as he as the teacher, going into prisons as the teacher, it changed him. Excuse me. So I wanted to have that experience.
Mm-hmm.
And through the help of a guy named Tim Bryant, who's got his own prison service called excuse me, called One Love Prison Meditation Project. He really
Mm-hmm.
helped me to kind of get like my bearings. He kind of trained me what it's like to go into prison and how to get like the clearances and do all that. And then at the beginning of 2022, I started working in Lancaster Correctional Institute here in Trenton, Florida, which is about 40 minutes away from Gainesville.
Mm-hmm.
And I went in thinking that, it was going to be like, I'm going to be this white knight that rides in and like, and we'll see what happens. And really what it's turned into is another ashram.
Mm.
It's been amazing. Now, these are people who've been through a lot, right? And all that conditioning that I talked about, they've like, we talked in our conversation, we talked about how like society can condition us, but it's also our parents or lack of parents, or these guys in this, they just never had a chance. Like, that's the
Right.
thing I see.
Yeah.
So when I started going, I really got an appreciation of that and how much I've learned from them. It's kind of a cliche to say, yeah, I learned from that, but it's really true. Like,
Mm.
the physical layout of the space is that there's a faith and character dorm at this prison, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not maximum security, it's kind of one level down. So there's 40 men in a really small, loud space where they're constantly bumping into each other physically, emotionally, spiritually.
Mm.
There's Christians and there's Buddhists and there's, just like, you know, uh, I can't remember the name of the witch sort of the
Wiccan.
Wiccan. Thank you very
Yes.
much. There's Wiccans. Like, there's everything amongst these 40 men,
Mm-hmm.
and they have to learn how to work with that. And some of the spirituality that is taught to them is very hardcore, and it's like given to them as their job to change everybody's thinking,
Yeah.
and they have to maneuver that and they have to work with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I get to enjoy that. I get to go in and I do guided meditations with them, and then we just talk. And
Right.
I I found like how much stuff we carry from past generations, our parents, our grandparents, like that thing that is in different spirituality, where there's like 7 generations back and forward. It's real. Like, I've
Yes.
experienced that. Like, it's generational trauma that screws these
Mhm.
guys up.
Yeah.
and giving them a space to feel validated without like having to do something to earn it, just like in who they are.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been life changing. I can't say like here's what I've learned. One of the things that I've learned I think is most important to share is that we do this work, right? We meditate and we try to improve ourselves and we work on ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
When we get to a point, there's going to be a space in everybody's walk, everybody's journey to provide service, like real service, like not ego building service, like not for
Right.
myself. It started out that way for me. Like there was a part of me that was like really
Yeah.
into like I'm the guy who goes to prison,
Right.
but it can be quickly replaced by just doing the right thing, by just helping people and giving people space to be validated. And
Mm-hmm.
whether it's prison or just smiling at somebody on the subway or saying hello and letting somebody in your lane and traffic every day has thousands of opportunities for service.
Mm.
And that's the key thing that I've gotten from this is looking for opportunities to just make the world a little bit better, just with a little
Yeah.
bit that's in front of us.
Yes.
So it's been life changing for me, and I really love the space of teaching spirituality without like sticking it to a particular deity or religious
Right.
faith, giving them all space to work with each other. And I recommend it.
Wow. It's not coercive or controlling or moralistic. Like, I'm sure a lot of those men, their whole lives have felt kind of, I don't know, like judged,
Oh my
and
God.
measured, and and obviously because they have a number attached behind how much time they're going to serve, and so there's this measurement of how much you made a mistake, like how big was the mistake, and we put a number behind it, and they tend to kind of see themselves in that way. But when you can go in there and just kind of love them where they're at, I mean, that's tremendous. That's tremendously healing.
You really nailed it right there. Thank you for saying that. Cause like that's the thing I felt is that when I walk up to the gate, I can feel my heart change. Like literally the heart energy that I carry
Mm-hmm.
starts to change. And in carrying myself in that way, like God, what you said is just so true. Like at the end of the day, that's all I have to share, right? It's just a sense of I don't I never ask them what brought them in there. I never asked them how much time they have. I never ask them any of that. I just
Right.
let them work on that themselves, but to help them find validation in themselves and then to encourage them to mentor each other.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like I do mentoring with them. I go twice a week. I do 3 hours on Wednesday where I teach a class, an hour, 3 hour long classes on meditation and spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
And then on Saturdays, I just go and do one-on-one mentoring. But the point of that is helping them to expand their own ability and their own ability to love and their own ability to set their own ego aside and their own ability
Mm-hmm.
to set their preferences aside and really act in love. And, as messed up as people can get with hardcore doctrine,
Yeah.
there are examples in every spiritual tradition that say love is the most important thing. Corinthians goes into it huge,
Mm-hmm.
just opening that heart space and that that's a common language that just doesn't it can't be muted.
Yeah, I think it changes lives, doesn't it? I
It
mean,
really does.
to feel like you're of worthy as a human being. You have worth. You have value. That's life changing, because a lot of us that end up in tough situations, whether we're imprisoned or whether we have personal difficulties or health difficulties, there's a devaluing of ourselves somewhere in there, and have someone come alongside you and just say, I love you right where you're at,
Yeah.
right where you're at, right. It's not, all of you.
Well, that's what namaste means, right? The part of me deep inside sees that part of you that's deep inside you that sees past the bullshit, right? And just goes
Right.
right. And you said something like some people, everybody, April, everybody has that. I literally, I do work with a lot of different kinds of people. And some of the people that I work with are incredibly affluent and been incredibly successful. And I swear, like when you ask them to rate their life satisfaction, happiness with themselves, they can have kids at the best colleges and even have a great relationship, a great spouse, and
Mm-hmm.
their self-satisfaction. Like one person I talked to was incredibly successful, had all that stuff, and he kind of rated his self-satisfaction at like 5 out of 10. And I'll
Mm-hmm.
literally go to prison and get like sevens and eights. So
Right.
it's like everybody's feeling that, so that's why I say, like,
Yeah.
we have a chance to go out and just share love. And it is as simple as smiling. It's as simple as shaking a hand,
Yeah.
patting somebody in the back, being patient with somebody who's taking too long in the grocery line, just
Right.
whatever.
Right.
Let somebody else have their moment in front of you. And the powerful thing about that is that, like, literally will pry your heart open. Like, just like that act will help you to perceive yourself in a different way. And then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. You say, wow, I actually do have some love in here. I can actually help other people just through simple stuff. And that's a seed. Like, trauma is a seed. It's some scar, right? It's a seed
Mm.
that grows and it takes on weight as we don't want to deal with it. And it becomes infested or festers and it grows. But love and beauty are also the same characteristics. So if you encourage those things to grow consciously with awareness, it's amazing. Like, I swear, it just, like, it does more good for the doer than it does for the recipient. And
Oh,
just
yeah.
love, just like you said, just love.
Mm-hmm.
People can see it in your eyes. It's like you don't have to say anything. You don't have to preach anything. You don't have to tell anybody to do anything. Just love them, and they'll tap into that space inside their own heart.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not about them agreeing with you or disagreeing with you. It's not about, what they align themselves with or don't align themselves with. I mean, we can all love one another that way. Or we just, I just love you because you're a human being, because you're here, and you're
Yeah.
worthy of it.
Well, and actually, there's a lot of space for growth there because,
Mm-hmm.
like, so I could say, could you love Republicans? Could you love Democrats? Could you love people who do terrible things? Could you love?
Mm,
And we're taught to love everybody. Now, we have a dharma, a responsibility to protect ourselves and take care
sure.
of ourselves, and
Yeah.
be able to support ourselves. There's a lot of, but there's space for both.
Right.
We're not as vulnerable as we think we are. Once we get really, when we identify with the deepest part of ourselves, with consciousness and
Mm-hmm.
beauty, it's almost like we're bulletproof. Like, nothing can mess us up.
Because you're in alignment, right? Like, you're what's true for you.
There's
What's
nothing to take away from you because you
No,
love it.
because you're not
Nothing.
threatened, and therefore you're not afraid. And I think that's a lot of what you're saying is like this, getting down to who you really are deep on the inside gives you intuition, like an inner knowing of what's correct for you. And then you have naturally have boundaries, but boundaries are a swinging door. They're not a wall, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not going to allow this because I love myself, but I can still love you and not not allow this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it takes practice. Like,
Hmm.
it's fine for us to sit here and say, like, this is all beautiful and everything, but it just takes effort, and that's
Yeah.
the thing. Like, if we go back to what you said about community, a community is a mechanism, it's a structure for doing the work that gets you to that point.
Right.
And even if you don't have community, you can find it. When you're ready, the guru will find you, as they say. And I find that
Right.
metaphor works across spiritual traditions. But if you really desire to find peace and a sense of deep satisfaction, an energy out there that will take care of you.
Mm.
There is a force, call it whatever name you want, but let it happen to you, and find a sangha, find a group, find a congregation.
Yes.
There's people to love out there and people who will love you, and it just takes practice. I just like to reinforce that.
That's a very encouraging message because I think, there is just so much separation in our society. And, we do tend to kind of go off on our own when we don't feel safe. And I know I do. I mean, it's hard if you've been burned or hurt,
Yeah.
but I think when you recognize what is for you and what is not for you, then you're right. The community will come to you. It'll start to form, you know.
It changes. this work that we're talking about changes our attitude about what it is to even be hurt. This
Hmm.
is this is my favorite reference point. I have this like sitting right by my desk.
Oh,
Khalil
yeah.
Gibran, the prophet.
Yes. Oh, yes. Yes.
So he
Wonderful.
talks about love in there and how the nature of love is that it will break your heart,
Hmm.
and that to try to experience love without being willing to risk the pain of love, he calls it the threshing room floor, is the metaphor that he uses in his poetry.
Hmm.
It's that willingness to put yourself out there. Like, I've experienced this myself, where my heart has been through incredible moments of pain and breaking.
Yeah.
And it when we really surrender and not act to defend ourselves, and we open, our heart is broken open, it becomes a place where all that pain cleanses the heart and makes us able to love in a really deep way, without selfish need, without not transactional love,
Hmm.
but pure unconditional love, which is
Hmm.
the real power.
Mm. Yes, that's it. That's it. Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, and it's a journey. It's not something we do perfectly right away, you know. It's you're going
Oh
to make
yeah.
mistakes, and that's okay too. That's how we learn. You know, I always think of the earth as just one big school. I mean, if you end up here, you signed up for the advanced course.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, it's really something. So, mm, so you work with individuals as well.
Yeah, yes, I do coaching. I've been
Okay.
doing, I've been one of the amazing and beautiful things about the temple here in Alachua. It's a tiny place, but since Mickey's books have done so, we have really incredible people come from all over the world. I mean, literally last night in our sangha, there was people from Australia.
Mm,
Last week we had people from Austria. There's people from California, and it's like a room with 100 people in it, packed, shoulder to
right.
shoulder.
Yeah.
But really amazing people. And as I've gotten to know people over the 30 years, they've encouraged me to do coaching, as I have kind of done that ad hoc. Like we leave the temple, we go for a walk.
Hmm.
And so, yes, I do coaching. My website is timodavis.com, and
Okay.
you can sign up for coaching there. I've got some classes too on the untethered soul, which
Oh,
I am starting, and
okay.
that there's information about that on my website. And the nature of the classes is that we create a cohort, and we read the sections. There are 5 essential sections to the untethered soul, and they each section really beautifully encompasses a major piece of the spiritual path, and it creates a framework for growth. And we'll do a reading together. I have a workbook which has some exercises around it that'll kind of help expand certain ideas that are in there. But then we do an hour-long cohort Zoom call where we just do give and take about the class. And I've been listening to my beloved Michael A. Singer for 30 years now, so I have my own version. It's definitely my version of
Hmm.
how to answer questions and how to work with it. But there's in that transfer from taking mind knowledge to experience,
Hmm.
a group like this can really help, and it creates a sense of community to have a group like this. And that's what I'm trying to create. And I've got a little website with a message board and some other further teachings so that people can find and build community in there too. So I'm
Okay.
starting all that out, which is really exciting for me.
That
I
is.
I am not the kind of person who ever imagined that I would do this. I really, like, in the 30 years that I've been here, my anticipation was that I would get quieter and quieter and recede into the woodwork and just like meditate. But somehow the work in the prison and work with people,
Mm.
there's an energy behind that seems to be pulling me along. So I'm just doing my best to serve until it's not what I'm supposed to do anymore.
I love it. I love it. I love your humility. I love your the you have this teachability about you, like you're learning all the time, and from everyone you encounter, I think I'm very excited about your work. So I want to make sure we tell everybody about it. So your website, you've got a website. Are there any other links that you would like to share?
Well, timodavis.com is,
Okay,
that. And
that pretty
you
much
can
gets.
sign up. Yeah, and you can sign up for my meditation there too. So I do guided meditations every Tuesday morning.
Okay.
And those are, I think, the value of those, at least the value that I'm trying to, create, is that for many people, it is difficult to meditate, and having a voice kind of guide you can show you the benefit of what it's like to get into that quiet space.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I'm trying to make it worth the effort so that when
Yeah.
you sit down on your own cushion, that you see what you're going for and willing to kind of put that effort in to get there. You know, one of the things that, like, you talked about, like, like being willing to learn. I I look at, like, there's a history of how we pass knowledge on that goes
Mm-hmm.
back to, like, the Stoics, right? The ancient
Right.
Greece. And it's about people talking to each other and working with each other. And that we're all in this long chain. And it's not like there used to be Christ, and there used to be Buddha, and there used to be these, saints and sages.
Right.
Everybody is sharing knowledge, and technology has changed how we share that. And it feels to me like we're in more of sort of a community aspect online. And there are fewer and fewer sort of, like, how do I put this? Like we used to sort of look at the guru as somebody who sat at the head of the room, and they were,
Right.
fail proof. And that, like, no spiritual teachers are without their flaws and their
Exactly.
difficulties. So we're all in a, that's what I'm getting. We're all in a space of growing and helping each other grow.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like I'm in a long progression of that. And I have so much to learn. Like, I've seen people who are doing really well, and I'd like to be one of those people.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think you're doing it, and you're changing lives just by simply being there, being available, being real, you know. Yeah, I think we all have that inner guru inside us. And I think the
Yeah,
the teachers that really bring that out, they're really invested on you finding that space within you. And
absolutely.
because you have everything you need. Like we're not missing any parts. There it's in there.
Yeah.
And I look at your work and I see that's what you're doing, and bravo, keep it up.
Well,
I mean,
thank you.
it's wonderful. So I'm gonna definitely be including all of his links underneath. And you said real quick again, Tuesday mornings at
8 a.m. Eastern.
okay. So you can meet him there and do a guided meditation,
Yep.
and I know you'll really enjoy it. So
I'd like to throw one other link in there. TOU.org.
okay,
TOU.org. That's a Temple of the Universe's official website.
okay,
And um, Mickey is Mickey Karen Entner, his assistant, they're posting his talks on there. So there's 3 talks a week, and they're amazing. And they're incredibly helpful. He's a gifted teacher, and I just want to make sure everybody has a chance to tap into that, because it's a beautiful, like, the whole thing together. Like, we need lots of teachers, right?
yes,
Eckhart Tolle is beautiful, and Ram Dass, and all these people. So
yes,
there's the diversity of all the different kinds of teachers out there really needs to be expressed, and tap into all that, because it is, at the end of the day, like you said, it's in our heart that really matters. We have to grow,
mhm,
become self-sustaining, find our own connection with God, and be able to need only ourselves so that
yes,
we can share more beautifully.
with one another.
Yeah.
So it all goes back to community. Well,
Yeah.
thank you, Tim. This has been wonderful, and I so enjoyed you coming on today. And you are welcome anytime.
Oh, thank
And
you.
just congratulations. Keep doing what you're doing. It sounds wonderful. So thanks again. I appreciate you coming.
Oh, my pleasure, April. Thank you so much. And thank you for the good work that you're doing. Keep helping people.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right.
Namaste.
Namaste.